technical corrections sort of in the overall care and feeding of our policies that we go through occasionally, and there will be another tranche coming soon now that the legislature is in its waning days of this session. So, but we wanted to get these completed. Let me say first that we are in compliance with all of these policies. We're not out of compliance with any of these. These are just things that sort of tighten them up and get them in the proper format. The first two are reflective of the fact that in 2019, the General Assembly required a policy, the state board adopted a policy on educator diversity, and we submit goals. And 1700 and 5100 are school district goals and personnel goals. We submit those to the state as part of our district plans every year, and this just reflects the fact that we do that. I don't know anything else to say other than what's said in that narrative that you have there as a one-pager cheat sheet, but I would need motions and votes on them separately if that's possible, Madam Chair.
Anybody like to make a motion on school district goals?
I make a motion that we pass policy 1.700 school district goals. And Dr. Severe, is the 5-1?
There need to be separate votes, please.
Okay. So I make a motion to pass policy 1.700 school district goals.
I second it.
Any discussion? Sometimes I forget I'm in charge. Any discussion? No? Okay. I'll just say that I think this is, I'm glad that we already do this, but I think it's an important policy to name educator diversity goals and then try to reach them. And so glad to see that we are already doing that. Okay. Oh, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of this policy, 1.700? Okay, passes unanimously.
And 5.100.
I make a motion to pass 5.100 personnel goals.
I second it.
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor of passing 5.100? Thank you so much. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll move on. 1.900 is our charter school application policy, and the only change is in the past, if a LEA denied a charter school application and they took it before the state, it would go before the state board. Now it goes in front of the newly constituted Tennessee Charter School Commission. So if you look on the policy, you see the only change is literally State Board of Education has been changed to read as Tennessee Charter School Commission. And that's the only change. And I would ask for a motion.
Motion to approve policy 1.900 charter school applications.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of passing 1.900, raise your hand. Much.
Policy 4.400, if I could, Madam Chair, if it's okay to go on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In the past, in terms of textbook and instructional materials, well, a couple of things are going on with this policy. First of all, we had 4.400 and 4.401. Just to make it a little easier, textbooks and instructional materials are kind of the same thing, and we had those in two different policies. Tennessee School Board Association recommended, and we agreed that collapsing those into a single policy made the most sense since they're kind of treated the same way. The real change to this is, just for your knowledge, that when the local textbook or instructional material selection committee wants to do something that's not on the state list, a waiver is required. So a waiver is submitted to the state approves that, comes back and says, here's what we would like to do. Local Board of Education, please adopt these instructional materials. The change is before that waiver is submitted to the Commissioner of Education, the board would have to vote on it. So it was truly the board sending the waiver rather than the director of schools sending a waiver. It's just a change in the law that we have to comply with. And that's reflected in the language.
Motion to approve policy 4.400 textbooks and instructional materials.
Second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of passing 4.400, raise your hand. Unanimously passes. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Testing programs 4.700. Our policy has been that standardized test, the TCAP or 10 Ready or any sort of state test would count as 15%. Now we have a hold harmless provision through this General Assembly for this year. So we have amended that on that page 2, line 6, to read, or the minimum allowed by the state of Tennessee. So that just gives us the opportunity to use whatever that minimum is as set by the state. In this case, that could be potentially as low as 0. And that's the entire change.
Motion to approve 4.700 testing programs.
Second. Discussion? Okay. All those in favor of passing 4.700, raise your hand. So much.
And 6.405 is just, this is not a legal correction that came from the General Assembly or a compliance. It's just something that the first line sort of read squirrely, using a technical term. It said, if under exceptional circumstances, and that's not really, our school nurses are delivering, great work all the time, and it's not an unusual thing for a child to have to receive medication under the care of one of our school nurses. So we just cleaned that up to say, if a child is required, rather than if under exceptional circumstances. Because it made it sound like it was something that didn't happen, but on rarest of occasions. And some kids are receiving medication every day as part of their plan. So we just wanted to clean that up, make it more reflective of the great work our school nurses are doing. And that's all we have for that.
Motion to approve policy 6.405, administration of medicine in a school setting.
Second.
Third.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll alert the Tennessee School Boards Association of the changes. And as you know, they host our policies, so we'll make sure those are up when you'll be learned when they are up and posted as amended. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Welcome, Chair Buggs. Good to see you. Okay, so I will move forward as though we've all read and diligently underlined and highlighted. But if you haven't, that's okay too, because it's a conversation. So this is Chapter 5, When Things Go Right. Learning, monitoring, communicating, with some districts highlighted and some really, what I thought were helpful rubrics that we, could discuss at some point maybe. So I'm happy to open it up to the floor, but I will start by saying I thought it was interesting, the opening pages talking about how low voter turnout is not, people assumed it was low satisfaction. It was the opposite. Low voter turnout means there's people that aren't worked up enough to go show up to the polls. I can't decide how I feel about low voter turnout as an expression of support. But anyway, so I guess we are in that category, in the low voter turnout category. And so anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And I thought there were a bunch of things in this chapter that we're already doing or that we already profess to prioritize. And I thought, so that made me feel good. So I'll open it up. Does anybody have anything that stood out to them from this chapter about learning and monitoring?
I think just that initial part, when I looked at low voter turnout, I didn't think it was because they thought we were doing a good job. I think what we have learned, when people don't have children still in the system, they kind of check out, and the majority of voters are 55 and up. And so in my science of working on people of why schools still matter, even though your kids and your grandkids may have graduated, because it keeps the vibrance of a community. So.
I think voter turnout in local elections is historically lower than obviously national elections anyways. I think it's potentially true that, people when they're eager or encouraged to come out because of whatever those reasons might be, then they show up. But in general, I thought what was the most interesting was information about how to create a learning board and the information about how they try to create that culture. And on page 75, I thought it had some good actionable items. Some of them we're already doing, including the student representative that we've discussed and that we're taking applications for currently. Thank you. But I know a board newsletter, I think a board newsletter being actually mailed is a bit cumbersome and a lot to ask. But I know that there's been, at least I have had discussion before of like doing a board e-newsletter, that kind of thing. And then I think having 2 members available to talk informally with members. I'm not sure because of our 5 o'clock time slot if that's actually very feasible, because I don't think people can typically get here at 4:30 and we usually have meetings budding up to it. But I think as people having more access to us is never a bad thing.
So interestingly enough, on page 74, we've had board members running who have promised a lot of little things to people once they were elected, and I've said, here's some of the information we have on that. It's not really our role to say we're going to get new basketball uniform. That just gives the public the perception that the school board is just a good old boys club. And I talk often about, I'm hoping that the school board will no longer be seen as a glorified PTO. There is a place for PTOs, and we need them. We need to collaborate with them. We need that parent voice. We need parent advocacy at every school. But a school board is supposed to help support and manage the district. We are supposed to funnel our supports to our director. We're supposed to funnel any questions to our director. We're supposed to funnel our, or better yet, we're supposed to receive guidance from our director based on the strategic plan that we develop. And so the idea that it was called out in a bit of a silly way, but I mean, we've heard school board members do that. Promise new basketball uniforms, promise a new track, or promise something that was quite inappropriate and made us appear to be a PTO as opposed to a board of directors that looks at an almost $1 billion budget. So just every time I see nuggets in this book, I'm like, wow, why did I not read this 5 years ago? Just really, really good.
I mean, to combat that, they said that the board produced a binder, board roles and responsibilities that the district gives to anyone who's considering running. I know that that's been something, again, I hate to say we, but I know I have discussed, about having of course it wasn't a binder, but it was a more informal meeting among potential candidates and giving them more concrete ideas of what are our actual roles and responsibilities and how they can actually be effective. Because we do have, not just here, but it is a national thing where people run on singular issues and then end up being not as effective as they want to be. And that's very frustrating, not only for the constituents that vote for them, and they're not able to promise that basketball uniform, as the example is given here, but it's also frustrating for that person because they aren't able to measure themselves upon what they wanted to get done. So I think us having an informed group of people that run for school board is probably key to having informed members as well.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, about, what it's actually like on the board versus what you sort of think it's going to be like. And I actually met with the gentleman who was my opponent in my campaign yesterday, and we talked, because he's my constituent also, and we sort of just talked about the experience and what it was like and what we didn't know and the things we learned along the way. And it was, and he was even asking me questions like, what, along with him saying he would never, ever run for anything again. So clearly it wasn't a great experience for him. But just the idea that you create a platform, and a lot of that platform is very much based on what you see in your community as a parent or maybe as an educator or former educator. And the reality is that when you get on the board, it is about creating that collective voice and being an advocate, and also trying to have the view of what's best for your district, what's best for the entire district as a whole. So that part of it, to sort of wrap our minds around how we might let potential future board members know, what the job actually is something I would like for us to dig in on a little bit more.
I'll also say, this is coming at a great time because we've spoken with TSBA, and by we, I mean me and the Dr. Severe and Ms. Bobo. They've really been helping me coordinate with TSBA to offer us a professional development, a half day that I hope all board members can attend. It'll be May 21st, but I think because we've leaned on them in the past, but we've not leaned on them consistently enough, they can offer us some actual supports. And I mean, NSBA is even mentioned in this book, the National School Board Association. I'm sorry, for those listening, the Tennessee School Board Association is just, they coordinate with and they support all the different school boards across the state. So they are a wealth of knowledge and experience, and, you know, we can just tap into them in many different ways because they're non-biased. You know, they're not coming with an agenda. They are here to support us in being the best policymakers and thought partners as possible. And I think it would be really good for us to have some conversation about best practices at that time. But I love the idea of focusing more on us. If you look on page 77, focusing on us using our expertise, our experiences to drive policy. It's just policy, policy, policy. We need experience to begin formulating policy to institutionalize the answers we have. And so I just, really good read.
That was interesting that at the bottom of 76, you know, somebody saying boards that cut their training budgets are cutting their own seed corn. And what's we've done? We don't have a budget for PD, for travel to go to, and obviously we're not traveling this year, maybe not next year, but I do think we have to dedicate resources like we ask principals to do for their staff on professional development, you know, for us to attend conferences, for us to just grow and learn best practices. I mean, it's too late to put it in the budget, but maybe not. But I just think it's something to, and I don't even remember what it was before, how much it was before. I don't even know. But it's zero now, I do believe.
Like 15 grand or something at one
I think it
point.
was like 15 or 20 or
Yeah.
something.
I mean, it's one of the things of, I was looking for that because I was just trying to figure out where it was in the chapter, so thank you for bringing that up. But, I mean, it's one of the things, you know, in my day job, I train people to run for office, but that's the part of, this is not a symptom exclusive to the school board. People see campaigning as one thing just because the professionalization of campaigning has become a thing, and there's literally movies made out of it. It's made to be sexy. It means to be fun. It's a great ego stroker in a lot of ways.
It's neither.
Rita trained me to campaign. I knew it wasn't fun.
Or sexy.
Yes, I brought the reality. I brought the reality to it. But a lot of people that come in, they assume, especially what you see on a presidential level, because people see that part not realizing it's a full machine. It's literally $1 billion adventure going into it. And understanding the difference between campaigning and governing. And people run, you're going to pick out one of those two things that was the impetus of, or the agitator that got you to run in the first place, whatever drove you. And most of the time when people run, you kind of have two types of people. People who run for the common good, knowing you're going for public service, and they usually do their due diligence beforehand, or people who come because something agitates them, not in a negative or bad way, but I'm going to run because I want to solve this particular problem. Not realizing when I'm solving that particular problem, I am taking on the responsibility of 30 other million problems and not focusing on that one part. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't look after the fact of, I win, I caught the bus, now what? And then realizing I have to govern. And governing is a totally different skill set than campaigning. And that's a difficult part because when you're campaigning, you're coming to people and you're engaging and people are impressed that you're running and they thank you for running. And then, people said, I'm going to support you. And then you get to go on public events and get to speak and you have a captivated audience. But no one's holding you accountable sometimes at that point because especially you're running for the first time, you haven't done anything for them to hold you accountable. And then when you win, and then you make decisions, and people don't like decisions you make, and then that feels uncomfortable, that doesn't feel well, and then becomes a whole different ball of wax. And I think that's the difficult part, and particularly when people look at school boards, sometimes they don't look at the same way of governing as you would a city council person, as you do a mayor, as you do a congressperson, state rep. it's a different level of government because they get natural more coverage, just because it affects everybody in some sense of the form. And like John said, if I don't have kids, well, I'm just going to ignore it unless something happens, then say, oh, I should pay attention if I don't have kids because I ran into something with a child that I felt they didn't live up to the standard or what I thought school was literally 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's the difficult part of when people run, people are not looking at the governing side and then the limitations of governing and the responsibility, the legal and fiduciary responsibility of governing. And so there's things that you want to do and you want to change, but I have a legal, a limitation of what I can and cannot do, or repercussions. And I think that's the difficult of not teaching civics the way we used to. People not being civically engaged like we used to, as a community. It's not just anything special, but I think if you look at voter turnout, even like the last couple elections in Nashville, when at one point we had literally an election like every 6 months. There was voter fatigue. Even though that was part of the civic duty, people were like, I am tired of voting for a special election, either for one thing or another. And so that's part of the difficulty of engaging people, because when you have your everyday lives going through it, how do you govern? Because you don't teach how to govern. It's a skill set that you have to acquire and learn. And if you have nonprofit board experience, that's the closest thing you get to before you get to the stage. And then most people don't have that, or if it is, it's a small nonprofit that may or may not have staff, that may or may not have budget, that you may or may not raise money for. And so you don't understand the true responsibility of doing that. And that's the difficult part, I think, when we come to this level of campaigning and being a parent is one thing and advocating, but then sitting in the actual seat and taking responsibility, it's a whole nother skill. It takes a whole level of emotional maturity, a level of skill set, and a level of capacity that's different, because your ego gets abused. And it does not feel good when someone says, I don't like the way you voted, you are wrong, and do it, and you have to stand up, or you have to make a tough decision. And you have to go against the grain because it's the legal thing to do. And that's a hard thing to say when you have 20 million eyes watching you, the media's watching you, and your voters are watching you. And you may never know, is that going to cost you in an election? And then that's a difficult thing, like, are you going to run knowing that you may lose another time, and losing's not fun. whether it's a race or whether you're just playing Uno, you know. So it's one of those two things of that's the difficulty about being in a public position.
Can I add on to that? I think that was, as I was reading this, I really thought some of the best board members, if you go from campaigning to governance, have actually managed someone. And so I looked at, just looking back at all the board members and great things we had and issues, and I look at this board, and the majority of people on here have managed somebody. So you know what it's like to bring people in, like be inclusive, listen, even when you disagree. Like, it's not like let me keep my PG. It's not we don't have an issue after this, and that's what I agree with. Like, just watching Jenny, like, she managed the whole. What was the department? Family engagement specialists. And family engagement specialists, I mean, they are the men and women who the schools love, and they report to somebody. And so just reading this, I think that's a good quality. It's not about the difference in campaigning and governing, but if you've never had experience managing, it's kind of hard to take a step back and govern one employee. So I think we should talk to people about that, like, what management experience do you have? That's my 2 cents.
I think some of that, to build on that, is also like your self-management style. Because we can teach, to a degree, governance, and we can teach good board maintenance and management. That's Robert's rules. And as a board, frankly, we've never had much training on Robert's rules, and not a bunch of us come to the board, and historically have come to the board with much useful knowledge or applicable knowledge about Robert's rules. So I think for us, maybe something that we have to do is create a culture among each other of training is a good use of our time. I think we're more in alignment with that now, but definitely in the past, and even now, so if we have a time where training is a part of our board retreat or what have you, that's usually the time that people will miss because they have other things they have to get done, or really that's a time that we need to prioritize. and we need to be able to hold each other accountable to being in attendance, because when one person misses, that's still an important part of that governance model of one person's not on the same level as everybody else. So I think that that's part of that self-management as well, of you can manage your own time and manage your own ability to learn our governance structure, our own Robert's rules, but we have a lot of work that we should probably do to help support that knowledge and that learning, because I think, frankly, myself included, all need some type of refreshment on what those are. And I mean, a quote is that the expectation is that if you want kids to learn, you must be a master learner. And I know for myself, you know, in the beginning, we got like a quick one-sheeter on some governance things, and it was exceptionally helpful, but that's still something we all probably need ongoing refreshments on, and would probably help us be more effective and on topic. And again, it would probably help us stay away from the concerns that have been brought up about talking about only basketball uniforms or those kinds of issues that we're not really supposed to have impact on, and we frankly can't.
Anybody else have reflections on? I thought it was interesting on page 73 at the bottom of the second to the last paragraph. The most advanced boards work on operating protocols, handbooks documenting their operations, and board self-evaluations. So we're not an advanced board, is the judgment here. And so I just think we should aspire to getting to a place where we're actually doing continuous improvement and monitoring and recording and also reflecting, self-assessing, to get to what PD do we need, to get to what support do we need. I think that's an aspirational goal that we could set, I think, together.
So I often think about why we aren't a higher functioning board, and it's often just a lack of education, not just amongst ourselves, but also in the community. You know, it can get hard to go to the grocery store knowing that you voted in a way that some of your neighbors wouldn't agree with because they don't understand the inner workings of the district. They don't understand the unintended consequences had you voted for something. They don't understand our true function. And so earlier when I think it's like page 75, talking about the school board speaking with members of the community before a meeting. You know, it's not feasible. You know, Nashville is very congested. We have traffic issues. It's hard for us to ask our professionals to stay here after 5 o'clock, but many other professionals and parents can't get here until at least 5 o'clock. But at the very least, the pandemic's silver lining was the idea of virtual meeting. Mm-hmm. It's normalized it. So having conversations on social media platforms, it can get cumbersome and it can feel like you're being attacked at points, but sometimes being able to insert some education for the community so that they so that they understand. Not to be condescending, not to be little, but I mean, I was a teacher here for 6 years? I was a student for 12, and I still had no clue what the support hub did. You know, I had no clue where our budget came from or what that looked like or how we advocated. There's so many different moving parts that as a student, as a parent, as an everyday community person, you don't know. And so you're pushing your elected officials to do something. We're being pushed as a school board to act like a council. Or, you know, to your point, at many points, Ms. Player Peters, you talk about us not being a legislative body. We are a board of directors that supports one employee. I work in the nonprofit space now. I can't imagine knowing the board members. I don't know the board members because I'm not someone they're supposed to engage with. They engage with my boss's boss. And our community believes that we should be the ones talking to principals. We should be the ones firing teachers. And so I think that we've, in the future, just got to think more about how do we make sure that the community members really understand what our function is. How do we make sure that those that aren't typically engaged, when they do engage, that we reach out to them and engage them. It's going to take a lot of different marketing strategies, but I think will be so worth it in the long run.
Can I push back on that? So I think, but that's a culture thing. The fact that, sorry staff, that a staff didn't say past 5 o'clock. I mean, when I worked in the mayor's office, sorry. When I worked in the mayor's office, I had to stay until midnight for a council meeting. I had to be at work at 8 o'clock that morning and be the next day. So part of it is, it's a culture issue that we don't set the standard and expectations. Now, I'm not asking staff to be here 16, 12, 20 hours a day, 20, so I'm going to be clear that my union colors will show. But that's also a cultural standard of if we as a body want to perform or work that way, we have to set the culture. And part of it, too, we have to set a culture among our other elected official colleagues that we are the least paid elected official compared to our council colleagues.
Which other school boards are so?
Yeah, and even some other school boards too, and other elected officials, because usually school board's the first entree to someone's introduction into politics and elected office. But the fact that we make literally several $1,000s less than our council counterparts, but yet we are the least 40% of the budget, that's a lack of setting the standard culture of not getting paid what we deserve for being elected official that has a jurisdiction larger than most council members. But also we haven't demanded that to say we need more staff. For the amount of coverage that we do, the council office has more staff and we cover the same amount of territory than they do. And so part of it is, what are we doing as a board to say, as an elected official, our board level requires more staff, or we require even a higher salary just because we cover the same jurisdiction and we have more people we represent. And so we should do that too. I mean, so part of it is we allowed ourselves to be the lower level of government because we have not stressed as education as important as people say, if it's the value as we say that it is, if we take up as much as the metro government is, then that should be reflected in the financial resources that we do. Like someone says, show me your budget and I'll show you your morals or your values. So I think part of it is we have to set that standard of if we want to do certain stuff or certain activities or certain outreach, we either have to fund it or ask for the funding to cover it and set the standard. If parents need this, if we need to have meetings on Saturdays, we need the appropriate staff to staff it, to put the infrastructure in place, and not just accept it just because. That's why it exists in the first place. But no one's ever questioned why the school board member makes just under $15,000, but yet a council member makes about, I think, 18.
No, they make 23.
Yeah, 23 now. I forget what the whole judges, the whole pay scale's changed over the past 2 years. So part of it is when the pay scale comes up for elected officials, school boards rarely ever mention. It's always mentioned about council members and their health care benefits, and then the mayor's salary. They never really talk about the school board in that way. So even though there's a natural cost of living kicker that we got when the salaries were increased, no one sat there and advocated school board members need a raise to be comparable of what the council makes because we're in the same jurisdiction. We cover 40% of what we do, 40% of the metro budget. So part of it is we have to set the standard saying, this is what we do, this is what we value, this is what it takes to educate our most important constituents that they say. If education, like the whole Oracle conversation that happened today at the IB board, part of that is what's going to education. How is education and Oracle going to work together? But we're not part of that conversation to a certain extent, even though education is part of that conversation of bringing them into it and how those taxpayer dollars are going to be invested in education. So part of it is, are we raising our own standards saying, if we're going to be part of that conversation, are we really a part of the conversation? And are you going to give us the resources to truly be a part of it and represent us as a whole, but also represent the children to make sure that those very employees that are coming to move here, we have the first-class education system, and we can promote that first-class education system that we do have, is the reason why companies are coming here in the first place. So part of it is I think we have to raise that expectation of culture of ourselves and just rise up and say, this is what we do, and it's worth the investment, not for our own selves, but really to serve the children, the families, and the staff to make sure education is a priority of the city.
So I think the point that I was making is that, we have parents that will say, well, why do you all meet at 5 o'clock? Why can't you meet later? Well, many of us are parents now. So it would be hard for me to meet at 6 o'clock when I need to put my son to bed at 7. That's selfish of me to think, but I'd be open to it. But then I also have to remember that, again, we're not a legislative body, and our staff that has to be here to present to us, I would want to question keeping them here. I mean, because they're already here until 9 o'clock. So, I'm trying to, I guess, think out loud and process what would be the alternative. If we meet on a Saturday, do we then still ask all of our staff that would need to be part of presentations and respond to questions? Would we really be asking them to come on Saturdays? And then would we, as neighbors making, $14,000 a year, would we be able to meet on Saturdays? Again, many of these are selfish feelings and thoughts, just as a person, as an adult that has a family, but also thinking about how beneficial it could be to the community. Like, what could we change to better support the education of community so that they understand why we need the investment? Because even though we've done a better job of advocating at this table, there have been times when at this table, board members have said, we don't need more money. We're mismanaging money. And that is what gets out into the community. So then when it comes time for us to advocate, we have some saying that we're poor and some saying that we're just fine. And so I think yes, in a sense, for sure, as a school board, we've got to get on the same page. We've got to elevate our thinking, elevate our conversation. But also, I always have to tell parents, I can't make anyone give us any more money. I can advocate, I can ask really nicely, I can support Dr. Battle and her, her budget, but I think that's where I struggle. So if I've elevated myself, I literally don't have there's no charter, there's nothing in our charter that says I can hold any other board member accountable for their action or misaction or, inappropriateness. So I can only try to elevate myself. While I'm doing that, I can beg, our funding bodies to give us the funding. But if they don't get it, if we don't receive it, how do I still then think about how to best use the limited dollars we have to bring the community in, to give them buy-in so that they understand why we need professional development? I understand that you feel like, your child's school needs more support or needs more pencils or whatever the thing is. But we have to be able to explain to community members who have never worked with a board, who don't understand the type of governance model we have, who don't understand large systems like this, explain to them why it is we need the types of investments we make, why it goes to people, and why paying those people is important. Because when you pay those people, not only can you pay for better resourcing and better training of them, but we inevitably get better outcomes for students. So it's not that I've heard someone say, well, why does the money not get to our students? Well, if the money is spent on professional development for the board, we find more strategic ways to use the dollars we have. We are more supportive of our director, and then not only that, if we offer professional development and better compensation for our staff, then they are resourced in a way that better supports student growth. They are the content experts, but it is conveyed in a way that's a best practice to kids. And so I'm trying to think through the different ways of marketing that, whether we get the money or not. What is it that needs to happen with board meetings, with community meetings, to really engage those that have been historically disenfranchised and frankly have had negative experiences in their own childhood with public education? How do we as a board take these learnings to better market ourselves as their advocates and their supports, but also a liaison to the support hub?
Rod.
So I'm trying to put a bow on it a bit.
Good luck.
What I hear us say is that we agree that we need more professional development, though we lack the access via funds or what have you to receive it. And that professional development would not only help us as individual professionals and our governance, but it would also help our constituents. My personal belief is that we first need to work on ourselves, on what is our own governance structure and understand that and what are our roles and responsibilities. And once again, probably understanding better the rules that we work within, which is Robert's rules. And then after that, I think we need to probably individually work together, though we talk a lot about advocacy. I think we still have work, though, of course, no reflection on the great work Ms. Emily Masters has done this year. But I think we all have work to do of maybe being encouraged to take up space. We can ask to go to meetings. We should go to more council meetings. We should be available to their community meetings. We should host maybe our own community meetings. Before the pandemic, I used to have Saturday monthly hours at a coffee shop, so I would be available to different kinds of families that may not be able to come to board meetings during the week or, during working hours. So I think if we are going to have pitfalls of being able to have this funding. As we've discussed, it's not even in our funding for this year. But we still have spaces that we can take, and we have steps that we can do. So I think the student board member, like mentioned here, is a good step. As Ms. Pupa-Walker mentioned, the operating protocols and handbooks documenting their operations, that's something we can do, particularly during our board retreat in discussion with TSBA. That's pretty much that whole training. So we can start some of that process, but I don't think we can do like board self-evaluations till we know what we're evaluating, which means we have to have those protocols and those operations decided upon. But I think we have good starting points even without the funding and without the budget. And so I don't want that to be what trips us up on saying we can't do something. Because we're all knowledgeable. We have a different set of capacities and gifts. And so I think we can be able to get some of this done, maybe just not the whole thing.
Yeah. And I think just adding on what Ms. Elroy said, one of the questions I had, and maybe Ms. Bobo can answer, when we think about coming to a board in Berry Hill, on a Tuesday evening, is it even possible that we do like community meetings? And so at one point, I worked with a parent group in Memphis, and we had board members who would come to the office in North Memphis to actually meet with people. And the funny thing was people were so excited that they got a chance to touch, to smell, to like really listen to board members right in their own communities. And so when I think about some simple things we can do, once the world opens back up, is that even possible for us to have like district meetings, maybe one in Antioch, maybe one in North Nashville, East, all of our communities. And like in the District 4, like I'm really going out, I'm talking to my principals, hey, PTO meetings, make sure your PTO meetings are this night and we can all have one big PTO meeting as you listen to the board. That's just a thought. I don't know if we ever done it or could even do it.
So I want to draw your attention to page 84. This is perfect segue. So benchmarks and questions for communication and engagement. This is a sort of a self-assessment, like, are you doing these things as board members, as a board, to communicate what we're doing? And these are like tangible recommendations, right? Things we could do. I think this is, I was thinking about between this and the self-assessment on page 82, I was thinking about actually creating these on a Google Doc or a SurveyMonkey and having us do a little self-assessment before the next book study to just sort of see where are we on some of these things and where are we doing well, where do we need to improve. I just think it might be helpful to, if I'd thought about it, I would have done it ahead of time, but I didn't think about it ahead of time. But anybody else want to jump in?
I'll just throw in something. I know we've talked about, and Ms. Bobo will remember, moving the board meetings to various locations across the city. That has been a topic that's come up at least 10 times in the past 13 years. We just need to be mindful that there's a cost associated with that because we do have to broadcast our meetings. So that is, the videography, the broadcasting, and all this. Not that it should be a reason to not do it, as Ms. Elrod says, but we just need to be cognizant of the fact as we talk about the financial needs we have in other respects and aspects, that is also a component of it. So everybody's going somewhere. So so there is no one spot that's going to be perfect for everybody. And so we're either going to get accused of catering, depending on the topic. I mean, there's a lot of variables in there. The benefit to having a central location is that people know where to find you. It may not be easy to find you.
Like a support hub?
Yes, here at the support hub. Here, located at Bransford Avenue. I think that's 2306 or something like that. But yeah, so there's the consistency that's there, the convenience. If we need to pull someone into a meeting or down here for a discussion, they're here, right? And so I don't think it's selfishness. As Ms. Buggs pointed out, I think it's the consistency. It's setting a standard. It's level setting. Now, adjusting the times possibly, leveraging school buses for transportation. Maybe we talk about those kinds of things. I don't think uprooting the entire operation is the most conducive thing to an effective meeting because it actually makes your meeting, it makes the day longer for people to relocate, to bring everything they need, to get appropriately set up, to verify connectivity, and all the other things that are necessary for an effective meeting. So I would just ask us that when we think about ways to accommodate, I think we're coming up with solutions before we're really identifying what the actual need is. And so let's figure out where are the gaps in connecting. I don't think it's where we physically have a meeting. I think we have other gaps in connecting with aspects of our community that have nothing to do with where we meet.
Final thoughts. I'll give us a minute before the board meeting starts. I think it might be a long one, so give a little minute to take a breath.
No, I think just to piggyback on what Dr. Gentry said, I think a little bit too what we underestimate is what it takes to organize for parents to get to a meeting, to communicate. As someone who used to be a community organizer, like, you know, if you go to an average council meeting, there's no one in the pews. Like, besides the lobbyists and a few people, it's not until something big comes along and someone's organized them that the council chambers is full. Same thing if you go to the state legislature. If you go to most of those committee meetings,
Empty.
there's not many people in the room. So also, you also think about, too, the work and the effort it takes and the infrastructure it takes for organization. And that's probably more of a communication issue than an access issue. So that's the other aspect of it, of it also, too, is it goes back to creating the infrastructure and what the infrastructure looks like. Part of it, yes, is advocating for that and not having the funds, but also it's just the literal, leg and sweat work that we have to put in to make it happen, and that takes time. And time could be an issue for whatever's going on in your life, whether you have that time and resource to do the hard, monotonous, grinding communications that it takes to make sure everyone gets connected to what it needs to be known to get there.
And just last also, just so we won't do groupthink, I would say, as someone who's been an organizer, like our life depends on getting people at the table. You know, as we look at, we're going to vote on a couple of things today, and as I look out into the crew, I see people who have taken their time because their livelihoods are on the line, and I think we got to push ourselves further, because when I go to the council, when I go to the state legislature, they're the people in the suits. But those people in the suits are getting things done for their special interests. And I just think we have to make it a point, just in my personal opinion, like to just get more people at the table, to throw ideas at the wall and see where we land. Because, again, when people show up and they show support, it's proven that things happen for them, most times in a good way.
Okie doke. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming to the book study. And we're going to go ahead and adjourn the governance meeting, and we will start back here in 9 minutes. So thanks, everybody.
You're my stretcher.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.